Now, the fourth subtask of the JSON Data Processor project, we're going to be working on the filter operation. So we're going to ask the user to give an input based on which they want to filter through. That is either CGPA or age. And then we're going to give the user option to choose an operator by which they want to filter the data. And finally, we're going to display the filtered results. So let's look at the objectives of the subtask, or how we're going to implement this particular function. So we need to update our filter students function, and we have to make sure it can perform the following functions. We're going to allow the user to filter by CGPA or age, and in case they give a different key, like let's say email or something like name, then we're going to print out invalid key. You can only filter by CGPA or age. And then we're going to ask the user to give a comparison operator based on which we're going to filter through, and we're going to apply the filter condition which the user gave. Now if the user selects filter by CGPA, then we have to ask the user to give an input. I want to see students with CGPA more than 8 or students with CGPA less than 7. Then I'm going to ask the user to give a CGPA based on which they want to filter. And then we're going to loop through the entire student records, and then we're going to apply the filter condition. And after applying the filter condition, whatever record matches the filter condition, we're going to append it to a different list, and then we're going to print out that list at last. Now we have our expected output over here. Coming to the code, let's look at our function for this particular subtask. So in the filter students function, first we're going to call the load data function to actually load the JSON file and store the data in a list format, basically a list of dictionaries. And then we're going to ask the user to give an input based on which they want to filter, that is CGPA or age. And the dot strip over here is used to remove any kind of white spaces that might be trailing or leading the input. That is, I can give an input as give a space and then type out CGPA, or maybe give out CGPA and then give a space. So it might be difficult to compare with white space. So we're going to use dot strip to remove all white spaces to normalize all inputs. And then we're going to check if the user has actually given CGPA or age, or they've given some other word. That is, we're going to give if key is not in CGPA or age. That is, if key is not in this list, then we're going to print out invalid key. You can only filter by CGPA or age. Now we're going to take operator as an input, and then again we're going to put the dot strip function over here. So based on which particular attribute the user wants to filter, we should ask different inputs. That is, for CGPA we should ask a float value, because CGPA can be in points. So we're going to ask the user to input CGPA, and then we're going to write the dot strip function to remove white space given by the user. And if it's age, we cannot have a float value, we need to have an integer value, and we're going to give enter age, and once again we're going to add the dot strip function. Now we're going to initialize an empty list called filter students, which will store the filtered results. That is, whatever results match our filtered condition, it's going to be stored in this particular list. Now over here, for student in students is the list of dictionaries which we get from the load data function. Student of key gives out the actual value of that particular key. That is, let's say the key is CGPA. Key is the input we took from the user. So let's say key is CGPA. Then student of CGPA, that is the CGPA for that particular student, that is the student whose iteration we're going through. If that matches, we're going to store that in the student value variable. Now here we are defining the actual filter conditions. So if the operator given is greater than and the student value is greater than the value, then it holds true for that particular condition, and then we're going to append it to the filter students list. Similarly, for the operator less than, a student value, that is a value for that particular key in this particular student of the iteration, is less than the value given by the user, then we're going to append it to this list. So similarly, we have for greater than, equal to, less than, equal to, and equal to. So equal to over here basically is a comparison operator. That is, they'll compare both the values on either side of it, and if it's equal, it's going to return a true. So let's say I want my GPA to be equal to 9. Then it's going to show all students which have GPA equal to 9. Now over here we are checking whether or not the list is empty or full. That is, let's say I find no students which match the particular filter condition, then my filtered students list will be empty. So first we're going to give a if filter student list, that is if it exists. Then we're going to print out in the new line student with key operator value. So why have we given this in flower brackets, and why have we given F? The F over here stands for format. What it basically does is it tells Python to evaluate whatever is present in the flower bracket at runtime. That is, instead of printing out key, operator, and value, it's going to print out the actual value of key, operator, and value variables. So this simply makes it easier to print out variable values. In this particular for loop, we're going to iterate through this filter students list, and then we're going to print out each student present in the list. And else, that is, else if the filter students list is empty, that is, there are no students which match the filter condition, then we're going to print out no students found with key operator and this particular value. And then we have our user choice in the main functions. So let's just run this code once. So I'm going to filter by age first, and I want age less than, let's say, 16. So you can see we found no students with the age less than 16. So let me just give less than 20 and see if I find any. So you can see we found a student of age less than 19. So let me just give an invalid input to see if our input is getting validated or not. Let me just give A. And you can see I've gotten the error message invalid key. So let me just submit this code once. So we've passed all 5 test cases. Let's move on to the final subtask.